excuse me, to an author who's going to teach us how to support an infertile loved one in a book. And it's a wonderful book that I just recently received. So we're going to bring on, and I hope I'm getting the pronunciation of the name correct, Zahie El-Khoury.
Zahie El-Khoury, yes.
Oh, I got it. Zahie El-Khoury. Okay,
yes.
I got it correct. I'm appreciative.
Thanks
for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for being available. Taking some, moments out of your day or your evening, based on where you're located, to talk
My pleasure.
To talk about your book. So I'll go into it really quickly and say,
sure.
Over 14 million American women are either unable to bear children or using some type of fertility treatment to assist in their efforts to have children. While
Right.
these statistics illustrate the pervasive issue of infertility in the U.S., they do not begin to illustrate the emotional toll that infertility produces, feelings of social isolation, depression, and frustration. I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to decrease and allow you to increase to talk about. I have some questions already
sure
prepared, but I want to. I guess my first question is, why did you write this book?
Well, Ted, I wrote this book because I've been on both sides of this issue. I myself went through years and years and years and years of fertility treatments before I conceived a child. And I definitely felt isolated and anxious and often ashamed and terrified that I would never have a child. And I know that a lot of my loved ones really wanted to help me. They wanted to be there for me, but they just kept saying things that would make me feel worse. And I really, even at that time, I felt like there was a need for something, for someone to just to tell them, like a piece of paper I could just hand them that would say, here, this is how you can be helpful. And then at the same time, later, once I had my child, I had friends who were going through it. And because I was very open about my experience, they would come to me for advice. And I kept seeing myself. Sometimes I would say helpful things, but often I would say things that made them feel worse. And I thought, well, why is that? I really have a lot of compassion for the people who are trying to help their loved ones who are struggling with infertility. And I really wanted to kind of be a bridge between the two states of being.
Excellent. I'm going to start off, before I even get into any other questions, I'm going to say how helpful your book was to me, number one, because I'm a dad who has two children, and I wouldn't even know the first thing to say to someone that has run into that situation.
Right.
I think our words, we try to say the right things, but our words, or the fact that we don't have any experience, or we lack the experience of being in the specific situation of what and what not to say,
right,
is so key. So I'm going to say, you're right that one of 8 women suffer from infertility, but also feel alone. So tell me, why is that?
I think it's a couple of different reasons. I think that I think this is getting better. I'll start by saying that. But I think that a lot of women for a long, long time have felt a lot of shame and embarrassment about it. And so when they were going through it, they just didn't want to tell anyone that they were going through it because it seemed like such a failure in so many ways. And I think because those women didn't share with their friends, then when their friends started to go through it, they didn't know that anyone else in their circle had ever had these same problems. And so it just kind of perpetuated itself that people kept feeling more and more shame because they didn't know that other people were going through the same thing. And then I think another thing is that, just fertility, the desire to procreate is so primal that when you can't do it, it just brings up a lot of other primal feelings. And I think that's what leads into the shame and embarrassment. I think it's changing now. I think that now there are a lot of online communities where women can go and find other people who, who aren't part of their daily lives, and they can connect with them and find support. But in a way that also kind of makes it worse, because if they're only sharing with the people who are online, whom they know are going through it, then they're not necessarily asking for or getting what they need from the people in their daily lives, the people they actually see and experience. So it kind of, the online communities help, and they also maybe keep people from connecting one-on-one.
I can tell you one. So I got married in 1999, and my wife and I didn't have our first child until 2001. But I have to tell you, in between that period, I can't tell you how many times someone said, "So what's going on? What are you guys waiting for?" It's those type of questions that come around, and we didn't fall into this category,
right.
but I can tell you the amount of pressure that was out there.
Right.
A newly married couple, and nothing was happening, and I think at that time I was 30, 31. So, basically, my folks at the time was like, "Hey, so Ted, what's up? What's new?" But, really making more of a joke of it. I'm like, okay, it's not funny, and I just wanted to give you that. So tell me this.
Right. People think they have a right to talk about it. It's interesting.
Yes.
And it depends on culture to culture, but people do think they have a right to ask and a right to give their 2 cents.
And
for better or for worse.
and I can tell you this much: I would never ask that question.
Yeah,
I would never say. So tell me, why did you choose the title for your book?
Well, I chose "Don't Tell Her to Relax" because that is the thing that, if I was part of all these online communities, and that is the thing that really drives a woman or probably even a man who's part of a couple who's going through infertility treatment. That's the one of the primary ones that really drives people crazy. I think it's very natural to want someone to help someone to fix this problem. I know I have that instinct, and telling someone to relax in particular is one of the most natural, and at the same time the most hurtful things to say. It's true that the mind and the body are connected, and relaxation can benefit everybody and just in everything. But relaxation won't resolve most of the causes of infertility. And your loved one, honestly, your loved one wouldn't be able to relax even if it did make a difference. So it's particularly, again, I chose it both from my point of view of something that was annoying to me, and also compassion for the reasons behind why someone might say it to you. And I'll follow that up by saying that I don't want you to say that I don't want to mislead anyone and say that relaxation isn't just a good thing in general, because studies have shown that if a woman is able to participate in, say, a mind-body support group, then actually her chances of conceiving do improve. But that's a different thing than just telling some random, some person and when you're not like a yoga teacher, just saying, "Don't tell her to just relax and it'll happen." It's kind of a different animal.
Understood. So in your book, you suggest that people shouldn't ask why their infertile loved ones just don't adopt. Be honest, I've wondered that myself. So why shouldn't we ask that?
Well, I think it's the phrasing of the question. Of course, adoption is a very important thing that everyone should consider. But I think again, the desire to procreate is very primal for many people, not all people, but many people really do have a desire to perpetuate their genetic legacy, that, what they got from their parents and, their parents before them. So the decision not to continue with your own genetics is a very personal one. And then I think also there's just a question about adoption. There's a blogger who reviewed my book recently, and she said, she was talking about how much this question upset her. And it was because of that word "just." It made it sound like adopting was as easy as ordering a pizza. And it's really not. You have to do a lot of paperwork, and there's a lot of home studies. And, some people can welcome a child into their life through adoption in fairly short order. But for many people, it takes a long time. And I can guarantee you that if your loved one is experiencing infertility, she or he will be investigating that option. And so to say, why don't you just adopt, is again demeaning to the whole the whole mess of questions that come up, and all the different options and things you have to consider when you're trying to build your family in the face of infertility.
Okay, so here's one from the heart. So from the folks that have children, what do we need to know to support someone who wants to have children and having problems with conceiving a child?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. I think now that I'm now a parent of 3, and we all know that it's not easy. Being a parent is not easy, and sometimes we might look back on our lives pre-children and think, oh, I wish I had done X, I wish I had done Z, I wish I had slept more, or finished my novel, or whatever it is, run a marathon. And so I think again, it's from that place of love that people want to say things like, oh, well, enjoy your time, and often they do it in a joking way. Well, they'll say something like, well, enjoy sleeping in now, because someday it'll happen, and you should just go ahead and enjoy your sleep now. Or, oh, you can take one of my children. And again, it's out of love, but I think those things that we now, I think those things can be really hurtful to someone going through infertility. And then also, I think that there are lots of events that come up when you're in a group of people who have children, and you yourself are experiencing infertility or secondary infertility. You could there are lots of things that come up that maybe, like, you stop getting invited to parties because you don't have children, or you do get invited to parties and then people don't understand why you don't want to go. It just gets a little tricky in terms of how to negotiate your relationship with someone who is going through this. If you know they're going through it, it can be a little tricky to negotiate those relationships. And I think just to be compassionate, and maybe even to open up communication. If you suspect someone is having trouble, or if they've told you that they're having trouble having children, maybe to open up the conversation and say, look, having this baby shower, I don't know how you feel about it. I would love to have you there, but if you don't feel like you are up for it, that's okay too. And to try to be compassionate in your approach, that's always the best thing.
So tell me about secondary infertility, and why is that important for us to understand secondary infertility?
Sure. I think I didn't even understand this when I was going through, before I had issues with fertility. And then even after I had my first child, I didn't really understand the import of this. Secondary infertility is the inability to conceive a child after already having one. So many people will, either whether they have or have not gone through fertility treatments for their first child, sometimes they have a plan. They have a vision in mind of what their family should look like. And for a lot of people, it includes more than one child for a bunch of reasons. It's all the reasons why people might want to have a second child. Maybe they grew up with siblings, or maybe in my own case, I didn't grow up with siblings, so I wanted to have a sibling for my child. And again, it is a really big deal. And I think it's hard to, a lot of people think, well, oh, you have your one child, so what are you complaining about? And I think that's really hurtful. And again, unless you're there, it's hard to envision why that could be so stressful. But again, I think it's important to approach these people to think that every person has a different vision for their life, and if they can't achieve that vision immediately, it's important to support them in what they want for their own lives. And I think there are lots of specific things that I mention in Don't Tell Her to Relax about how to do this. And one of them is to say, I think one problem in particular with this is that when you're suffering from secondary infertility, often if you're doing treatments, or if you're trying to adopt, or whatever you're doing, it takes away from your ability to connect with your child in the present, because sometimes it's just these things they're time consuming procedures and paperwork and all that stuff. And sometimes a gift you can give to your loved one who's suffering from secondary infertility is to help them either manage their childcare or do something else so that they can connect with their child more. That was a lot of answer to your question. I'm sorry, got excited.
No, that's great. So tell us, what's the most important way we can support a loved one that's having issues with fertility?
I think the most important way is to educate yourself about what they're going through, either by doing your own research or by asking them in really open-ended questions about where they are and what they want and what their struggles are.
All right. All right. So first, I guess my last question is, tell us best ways to get in contact with you, how to purchase your book, best ways via social media, and if anyone has questions, they find themselves in this situation and they're not sure really what to do. Best ways to be able to reach out to you.
That's lovely that you asked. Thank you so much. I have my own website, but my name's a little bit tricky to spell because it's a Middle Eastern name. So I have a second website called don'ttellhertorelax.com. You just type it all in, and that'll take you straight to my author page. And I have links to my book, which you can purchase for me. It's available as an ebook through Amazon or through my website as a print book. And then it has all my social media connections there. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter and all of those places. But I'm happy to help, and I'm going to be launching a coaching service too soon to help people navigate both their support of their loved ones and their own infertility treatments. So I'm happy to help. I'm very passionate about this. So thank you so much for having me.
No problem. We want to give you a one-time round of applause. This interview will be available on our site, and I'll be able to send it to you and your PR team.
Okay.
And we want to let you know, first time you're on the show, but it definitely